So this is my presentation for exercise 4. I'm just going to start off by going over the software that you have to install and the basic setup, and I'm going to do that quickly and just dive right into the code after. So the first thing we need to install is Eclipse Oxygen, which is a development tool to create Java and web applications. I already have it installed right here, but the link is in exercise 4. And then we also have to install the Apache Tomcat, which is an implementation of the Java servlet, and it allows us to run the local server on our machine. So now we're gonna start with the setup, so we can set up the server. Once you open your Eclipse Oxygen, just go to Window, not File, Window, then Preferences. Then under server, there's runtime environments. That's where you want to add your Apache Tomcat so you can connect the server. I already have it here, but you just click add and then add it and then finish. I won't do that since I already have it added. And then you have to go to window again, show views, servers, and it won't be added here. You would have to, I have it here already, but you'd have to right click and then new and then add the server. That's basically pretty much it for setting up Eclipse and the server. And now I'm just gonna dive right into the DB3 project. So I have it right here. We have our Java resources and our web content, and this project is basically, I'll just show you the output. It's listing the people from a database, and I added another feature which lists all the freshmen. The rest is just code that was already there. I just added the list freshmen feature, and I'll go over all of that. So I'll start with the people job. We have our Java files and our JSP files. I'm gonna start with a people.java file, which basically creates a class for the people within our table. So the ID, name, address, and status represent the attributes within our table. And then we have 4 different constructors. The default constructor, this just initializes our ID. And then if you notice here, we have a constructor with ID and a constructor without ID. And that's because our ID is auto incremented. So when someone's accessing or trying to add stuff to the table, they'll only be adding name, address, and status, not the ID. Okay, and now the next part is the people.dao.java file, and this file is important because it basically connects to the database. And let's just go through it. I went over these in exercise 3. This creates a connection. The statement is to execute SQL queries. Prepared statement is to also execute SQL queries, but when you don't have a default or a value set where you're getting the value from the user, and that's what we're going to be using here mostly, since we're adding tuples into the table. And then the result set is used to access the results and output everything, or to get the results from the statements and the prepared statements. Okay, so here we're connecting to our database, and I already ran this, so I don't have to put my password here. And then the next function is the list all people function, which gets everything from the database, which is a select star, and then it executes that statement, and then it stores it in the result set. And then the result set, while result set dot next means as long as there's rows or tuples in the table, it keeps printing all this stuff, or it keeps storing the ID and name and then creating a new person each time. So we're creating an object of people for every single person in the table, not the database. That specific table, the student table. Okay, and then this is just closing our result and our statement and then disconnecting. So the thing with HTTP and HTML, and what we're doing here is we're establishing a connection when this function is called, and then the connection, we get rid of that connection later. So the database or the web server and the database aren't always connected. There's only a connection when a request is made or a response is needed. And the other function is the disconnect function, which is just a protected method. So it can be used in the other Java files within that package. And it's just to disconnect from, or to get rid of the connection. And then here we have the insert function, delete function, update function. And then I'll start by going over those first. Insert is just we're using a prepared statement because we don't know the values and we're going to get the values from the table. Delete is similar. We're also using a prepared statement because we don't know which table we're gonna, or which row we're gonna delete, or which person. So we're using a prepared statement. And then the update, also using a prepared statement, so we can update our table, or update the rows in our table. Okay, and then we have the do post and the do get. So we'll see in the control servlet Java file that we're going to use do get, not do post. The basic difference between post and get is that get it runs the the parameters are applied to the URL and sent with the header information once executed. So there's a restraint on the header size. But here, since we have little data, or our data is really small, we can just use do get. Do post it sends the parameters separately, so it's usually used when you have a larger amount of data. Okay, and then the get people function is selecting the students where ID, so, oops, okay, where the ID is unknown, so we're using a prepared statement again, and then we're just going through the result set and creating creating an object for each person or each student. And then this is the function I added, the list all freshmen function. I just used these two lines to make sure that it ran properly. So it's very similar to the other functions, except the SQL query is different. I'm selecting only freshman students, and then I'm printing all the students, and then storing that result in the result set, and then the result set keeps going as long as there are rows within the table that are only freshmen, and it's going to create a new person for each one. Okay, and then it's returning a list. So the list, I have list freshmen. For each person that I create, I add the person to the list and I return the entire list right here. Okay, the next file is the control servlet. And the control servlet is what establishes a connection between the web server and the database server. So here we're initializing it, so we're creating a new object of people DAO, and then we have, I mentioned the do post and do get earlier, and I said we're only going to use the do get. So we have all these cases: new, insert, delete, edit, update, and fresh. And each case is called, depending on when it's used, from the JSP files. So if here we have update, insert, new, list, fresh, and then if the user clicks the add new people button, it's going to go to the new case in the switch statement, and then that's going to call the show new form function, which basically creates the dispatcher And then the dispatcher stores the request from the people form file, and then that request is forwarded. And then the same thing is done for show edit form, insert people, update people. It's all these commands are in the JSP file, which is just basic HTML code, and we form a connection to the files through the get request dispatcher from the here. And then the function I added was the show freshman function, which it calls the people DAO list all freshmen. So it stores all the freshmen in this list, and then it passes that list into the list freshman right here, which is in my freshman JSP file. I don't have that open here. And then see, it replaces list freshman with that list freshman. And then this is just a basic HTML code to print everything. It's a for loop to print all the freshmen in the table. And yep, that's pretty much it. And I ran this earlier. It's right here. So we can add new people. Just I don't know. Aaron random address freshman, and then we can edit people. You can just change the address, and then if I click on list people, lists all the people, and then the command I added, or the button I added, is a list freshman, and it's gonna list all the freshmen. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to learning more SQL commands.